Don't click end.
No. Captions.
Just hovering over the end button. No, not yet. Just getting going. Hello, everyone. Hi, Marjorie. I know, and always here first. Always the first comment.
Terry.
Hi, Kathy. Hi, Terry. Welcome, everybody. So we're wanting to talk today about the biggest mistakes that riders make in the flying changes. And I'd love to hear from all of you in the chat. What do you think are the biggest mistakes, or what are the biggest mistakes you make? And then we're going to talk about what we think the biggest mistakes are and talk about why they are mistakes and what you can do about them. Yeah. Hi, Heidi. Hi, Leslie.
Hi, Leslie.
Yeah, I'd love to get some conversation going here. So throw out some mistakes. What are some mistakes that riders make? Not just mistakes, faults of the flying changes, but what are mistakes that riders make in riding and training flying changes?
Here is it. Probably bad timing, rider blocking, yeah.
Okay, yes.
Good one. Sandra Norster says not waiting until the quality of the canter is good enough. Yeah. Another one. Yeah.
That's a good one.
Marjorie says, I think getting busy with your hands, legs, seat, and mind.
Oh,
That's true. Anything else?
Give them a little time. Heidi says, I'm too busy with the reins.
Shells is leaning from side to side, yeah.
Yeah, kind of throwing the horse into it with your body. I'm going to check also on Facebook and YouTube to see what people are saying in there. Takes me a minute. Oops. Takes me a minute to get
there. There are, in a way,
oops,
two types of mistakes, right? There are the mistakes in the execution, in the seat and the aids. And then there are the strategic mistakes that riders make in the way they approach it, right? Karen Suckle says slowing down too much and losing impulsion. Yeah, very true. Yeah. And Heidi says, Lydia Frost was saying, I'm ambushing the horse with the aids. Yeah, very true. Yeah. Good ones, lots of good ones.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Clicking the wrong thing.
So you're trying to find.
I'm trying to get to our page. Facebook always makes you jump through these hoops. Okay, we have so Sonia says overriding the changes causing tension in the horse and rider. Julie Williams says losing their seat. Susan Nielsen says horse not straight. Amanda Everidge Knippenberg says trying to ride the front end instead of the hind end. And Susan Nielsen says confirm the counter canter and the simple change, ride shoulder into the new shoulder. And I think that's her correction.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and Zaratnik here says I only do this with my own horse. I override them sometimes and don't let them flow through to do what I ask. Naomi says no idea, that's why I'm here, due diligence. Renee Supranand says losing correct tempo. Yeah, I think actually probably the biggest or most central mistake that leads to a lot of the others is that the riders don't prepare the horse or don't lead the horse in a methodical fashion to the flying changes so that the horse discovers the flying change might be a good thing to do because it makes life easier or leads to a more comfortable kind of state of being, afterwards. A lot of the times people don't prepare at all. They just at some point decide it's time for the flying change, so they canter down the long side, and then they give the aid for the flying change, and maybe they, make the aid really big ambush, throw the horse off balance, and then the horse maybe will change, maybe he won't, but he'll get scared probably. And then that creates a problem, right? Then they become afraid of what's going to happen at the end of this diagonal. We had a horse in training like that almost 20 years ago. It was a warm blood. And when first time I cantered him on the diagonal, he almost bolted with me. He immediately got panicked because he thought I was going to do something horrible to him at the end. So it took a little while then before he realized that, I'm not going to do anything to him. And, but I think that was sort of the method that they had used, right? Just knock him over. And then, of course, if it doesn't work and the horse doesn't change, rider gets frustrated, does it again, and then stabs him with a spur or whacks him with a whip. And then so it escalates because, of course, it's not getting better if the horse really doesn't understand what you want, and you just get louder and more aggressive and more forceful, then the horse gets tenser and more scared, and then
braces more.
Yeah. So that eventually you can't even go down that lane anymore, that diagonal or whatever line you were trying to ride, right? And so the lack of preparation and the lack of understanding in the horse leads to all kinds of mistakes, that the horse gets nervous, the horse starts bracing because he doesn't understand what you want, or he doesn't know how to do it. It's like, how am I supposed to do this without falling down? And then the rider ambushes the horse more, the rider uses more force, the rider starts drilling, let's do it again, let's do it again, let's do it again. And then, they tend to do, give the same aid, the same way, same line, hoping that they'll get a different result for some reason, right? Which is completely illogical. And and then they compensate with the exaggerated body movement, like they throw themselves around, throw the horse off balance, and so on. Or some people, they give a gigantic push in the flying change for whatever reason, right? And the horse just runs out in front of them. Other people over-collect, like somebody was saying here, losing the tempo. And if you make the canter too slow, or if you try to collect too much, then the hind legs get nailed to the ground basically by the body weight, and then they can't move, and then there is no way that they can change leads, so but underneath all that is usually a lack of understanding of the horse. The horse doesn't understand the components that go into the flying change. They don't know the building blocks that make up the flying change. And these building blocks are really simple and really basic, and you can practice them at the walk, you can practice them at the trot, you can practice them at the halt, some of them. And you can teach them to the horse very slowly, methodically, so he can really think, okay, which leg do you want me to move? Where do you want me to put it? How do I support myself so I don't fall down while I move the leg over there? And once they understand these elementary building blocks and the basic movement patterns that make up the flying change, then they stay calm, because then they know, right? They know their body, they know how to move, and there's no more fear of falling down, no more confusion. And then in the canter, eventually you just practice the same movement patterns that you had been practicing at the walk and the trot. It's an old hat for the horse. Oh, yeah, I've been there, done that. I know what it's like. I know how it's done. It's just a different gait, and then it's really not a big deal anymore. And you can set it up so the flying changes become inviting for the horse, that he feels like, oh man, this canter is really hard. And I think it would be much easier if I could switch and be on the other side, on the other lead. And when the horse gets that feeling that, I would really like to change leads and canter on the other lead, then they stay calm. because they realize flying changes are a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's not something that gets inflicted on me, but it's, thank God I can now canter on the other side, on the other lead.
Yeah, Shannon Moyes Clark had a great question. Do you want to read it?
She said, so you mentioned too collected. Does that also result in the hind end being late, especially in a horse who knows the changes?
It can.
It can. If you over collect, some horses, they get very braced, tight in the back, then they often over elevate, they stick the under neck out, they brace the neck, the pole, and the hind legs are held down forcefully on the ground, and they lose the freedom of motion. They can't easily change, and the canter loses the beach ball or rubber ball kind of quality. It becomes flat, and the horse doesn't come off the ground anymore. Just he's held down, and then everything kind of starts to brace.
To do a flying change, the horse has to be able to be supple in the hips. And when you're pressing the hind legs into the ground, over collected. Collection is good, but too collected can be bad in some situations. And when you're really cramming those hind legs into the ground, like some riders end up doing, sometimes with good intentions, they don't know. Then the horse ends up losing that suppleness in the hips that they need to be able to do that clean flying change. Also, if the hind legs are pressed so far to the ground, then the horse actually physically can't change in the same stride behind. So they actually have to either change late behind, or you have to let the horse shift a little of the weight, still not losing your collection, but shift a little of the weight into the front legs, a little bit more of a horizontal balance, not completely, it's still collected, but a little bit more, so that the horse has that freedom to be able to make the change. Carl McCulloch talked about this in a clinic once, I remember, and talked about how sometimes you have to shift the weight into the front leg to make the changes cleaner, better, smoother.
Hind legs can become quicker if you take a little bit of weight off of them. Historically, in the Renaissance and the Baroque eras, the old masters didn't do flying changes like we do, because they were interested in extremely high degrees of collection, because they wanted to do airs above the ground. So they put as much weight on the hind legs as they possibly could. So they got this very elevated canter that was then a 4-beat, where the outside front touches down after the inside hind, or even the 2-beat terre-à-terre kind of canter, or redop, where the hind legs move together and then the front legs move together. So if you increase the degree of collection in the canter, you go from the normal 3-beat canter to the 4-beat, where the outside front touches down a little after the inside hind. That's what you see in pirouettes, for example. And if you push the collection even more, then you get the 2-beat. Hind legs together, front legs together, hind legs together, front legs together. And when you have that degree of collection, there's just no way that the horse can do a normal flying change. So the old masters in the Baroque and the Renaissance, they would briefly halt and strike off on the new lead, right? So they would kind of interrupt the canter for a moment and then pick up the new lead. And the flying changes and these tempo changes, they were really an innovation of the 19th century, where everybody started riding thoroughbreds, and they were less interested in airs above the ground, and they were more interested in military equitation and outdoors riding, and everything happened in a more horizontal balance, right? And Francois Boucher was the one who came up with the one tempo changes, right? He rode the horses in a much more horizontal balance, and that frees up the hind legs, so the hind legs are not squashed against the ground so much, but they can move a little more quickly, and that makes it a lot easier to ride flying changes, right? So that's why if you increase the degree of collection so much that you basically overload the hind legs, then there's no flying change, or not a good one, at least. And
Go ahead.
it just can be a balancing act. You want an uphill balance. You want a degree of collection, but there still has to be enough speed in the hind leg and enough freedom of motion, exactly, so they can change, you know. And if you exceed a certain degree of collection, a certain degree of loading of the hind legs, then it's like you're nailing the hind legs to the ground. They can't come off the ground. They can't move.
When they're that flexed, they don't have that ability to be supple laterally as much as you need to do the change. Shannon Moyes Clark said, I've had problems with medium on the diagonal to the change just before the corner. It is clean if I do not over collect.
It's unclear.
Oh, it's unclear.
Unclean, probably not clean if it's crooked or over collecting.
Yeah,
could well be. So you have to find out how much you can collect. You have to keep the horse very straight. I mean, some horses get crooked when you lengthen. Some horses get crooked when you collect more. That's just an evasion. It's like lengthening and collecting are more work for the horse, and when it's more work, then they try to make it easy on themselves if they get a little bit crooked. So that will be really important to keep the horse very straight, and then experiment with how much do I have to collect him, how much can I collect him so he's still clean. That's a bit of a trial and error kind of thing too.
Yeah, you have to find, and with this horse, it's going to be a little different than with another horse. You have to find out how much, in a way, collection he will tolerate and still get a good clean. Yeah. I would practice actually going back and forth between a little bit more collected canter and less collected enough to be able to do a flying change and practice that. That will really improve your, it sounds like you're competing. That would really improve your scores, because that's the quality of that collection, that quality, that transition from medium canter to collected canter is really vital. If you just kind of get sloppy with it so that you can get the clean change, your score is going to suffer on that transition. So that way you can really get the horse collected, and then one stride later, let the horse into a little bit more of a horizontal balance, do the change and collect it, you know.
I would also look at how you lengthen and how you collect, because there are different possibilities, right?
Good point.
You could lengthen from the outside hind or from the inside hind. From the inside hind means in the second beat, when the main diagonal is on the ground and the horse's back takes your pelvis forward, you can just make this movement bigger. That's usually really easy to do, but the canter will be flat a little bit, and it could push the horse onto the forehand. If you lengthen from the outside hind, it's the first beat. When the withers come up, you push the horse forward and up and out. Then you create a more uphill canter. There are horses that canter too much up and down, like a rocking horse, like some PREs kind of do that. With them, it would probably be better to lengthen in the second beat. Horses that tend to get a little flat and downhill, I would lengthen in the first beat. And then when you bring the horse back to collect the horse, I find that for me, what works best is if I don't think of collecting like half halting with the rein or anything like that, but if I think of just lifting the forehand more and then driving, actually is like lift and drive so the horse jumps underneath himself. So it's a collection, not by trying to flex the hind leg or by slowing down, but collecting indirectly by lifting the forehand, and then you can step on the gas with your leg and tell the horse jump, but up. Hind legs under, forehand up, hind legs under, forehand up, and that makes the canter strides shorter, but they stay lively, they stay uphill, and from there you might be able to get a good change without overburdening the hind leg. So instead of thinking collection by squashing the hind legs down, you could think collection by lifting the forehand up. It's a little bit of different approach, but that worked pretty well for me usually. So, and yeah, play with it and see if your flying change is better. I could imagine that this gives you good balance without overloading the hind leg, so that your change stays clean. So. And that ends up basically being transition from medium canter to collected canter with almost no rein, right? Because you're just lifting the forehand, and then you don't need to half hold, and to put weight on the hind legs. It's just that raising the forehand automatically puts a little bit more weight on the hind legs, but without killing the movement of the hind leg. Yeah, Leslie. Wolf says, I've just started to canter my horse. He always strikes off on the correct lead. Would it be better for his confidence to teach him in walk or trot? I don't want to scare him. He's doing so well. I'm not sure.
On the right is versus the left. So she's just starting to canter. He only goes on he always strikes off on the correct lead. Would it be better for us?
Yeah, I don't quite understand the question. I mean, he seems to canter well in both directions. So what are you asking to do to teach him what in walk or trot? Not quite sure.
Yeah, maybe just specify a little bit your question, Leslie.
And if you just started cantering, then it's too early for flying changes, right? If that's what you mean. But you can teach the building blocks in the walk and the trot.
But maybe she's talking about to teach him to do the transition from walk or trot. I mean, I would stay with the trot to canter transitions if he's doing well with it. Stay with that for a little while, really confirm it before developing the walk to canter. Yeah. But you can specify your question a little bit more and we can help you.
Stephanie. Ross says slightly off topic, but I have a canter related question. I hope you might answer. My trainer has been introducing my canter challenge fjord to a bit of leg yield at that gait. I had a light bulb moment when she pointed out that to leg yield away from the wall, I have to change his flexion. Otherwise, I'm asking for half pass. What I'm wondering is, why is it harder for a horse to half pass, say 3 steps away from the wall than to leg yield 3 steps away?
A leg yield in the canter is always, it's called a plie, actually. It's actually called something.
But that's when you're moving away from the inside.
I know, that's what I wanted to specify. If you're, let's say, on the left lead going along the wall, to move to the left away from the wall, it's going to be a half pass. Even if you bend the horse to the right, it's just an incorrect half pass. It's not a leg yield. A leg yield in the canter is always away from the inside leg. But
you can move away from the outside leg in the canter. So it has a bit of a leg yieldy kind of feeling when the angle of the horse's body to the line of travel is different. If it's more parallel to the long side, I do that too, actually. Sometimes I think of it as moving away from the wall, keeping the horse relatively parallel. It doesn't have to be very deep.
Flex to the right or
not necessarily. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Yeah.
That's what I think her trainer is having her do. I'm not saying it's necessarily wrong, but I wouldn't call it a leg yield per se, although he would. So
it's a gray area, Technically, I mean, on the one hand, it's a half pass because you're moving away from the outside leg.
I'd still call it a half pass. I just call it kind of a.
The angle is different. The angle is more like leg yield, and if you're flexing to the outside, it's like.
I'd still call it kind of a homeopathic half pass, but we're getting into semantics. The name is really not what's important here. It's whether she's wondering why it's harder for a horse to half pass, say 3 steps away from the wall, than to leg yield 3 steps away. Ooh,
it has to do. I mean. In walk and trot in general, it's harder for a horse to do lateral movements where he's bending in the direction of travel. So haunches in, revers, half pass are harder than lateral movements where the horse is bending against the direction of travel, shoulder in, counter shoulder in. Or if you want to add leg yield, it's not a classical lateral movement, strictly speaking, but it's, you move sideways. And the horse is looking against the direction of travel. So those are always easier. And the ones where the horse is really bending in the direction of travel is harder. In these haunches in related lateral movements, the inside hind leg has to support the weight. And shoulder in related ones, the outside hind leg has to support more of the weight. And when you're cantering whole school and you're moving a little bit away from the wall, you can have a little bit more horizontal weight distribution, I think, whereas in a real half pass, the inside hind leg has to lift more and the shoulder has to come up more.
She says, yes, that's my question. Why is it harder when the horse bends in the direction of travel?
That's a good question. You can observe it that it's more difficult for most horses. Why that is? It has to do with the weight distribution. When they're doing a correct haunches in, the weight has to be on the inside hind, and the inside hind has to be very supple. When you try to ride a haunches in with a horse that's not ready yet, they will stiffen the inside hind and they will counter bend, and they will try to lean on one of the shoulders and then avoid flexing that inside hind leg. And in a good haunches in or half pass, the inside hind has to be under the body and flexing and really supporting the body mass. In the shoulder in, the outside hind leg is the one that receives the weight while the inside hind is crossing. And that outside hind doesn't have to flex as much as the inside one somehow. You could try it out. Try shoulder in and haunches in and watch what your horse finds easier. I've encountered horses that actually preferred a half pass over leg yield, or that preferred the haunches in over shoulder in. They were the opposite. But that's a smaller percentage. I think at least 80% of horses that I've encountered preferred shoulder in, counter shoulder in, leg yield over half pass and haunches in, Norway, and so on. So it always seemed to be that inside hind in the haunches in with a half pass that caused the trouble when it wasn't engaging and flexing enough under the body. That was always the reason why they wouldn't go sideways, they didn't want to bend, and it didn't feel good, and so on. So it takes a certain suppleness and strength of that inside hind leg.
Let me see if we have more questions in YouTube or Facebook. Weird. I had posted the link to the challenge on the YouTube channel and it's been removed. I don't know why. It's really weird.
That's very strange.
It says message retracted, but I didn't retract it, so I don't know.
YouTube doesn't like it.
Yeah.
Weird sometimes.
Okay, so maybe we should talk about the challenge. So we have a free 5-day challenge starting next week on Monday through Friday. We will be going live each day to talk about the path of training to the simple changes and flying changes. We're going to talk about how the biomechanics are related, how there are core components that you need to have in place to do both simple changes and flying changes. We're going to talk about that pathway and how you know whether you're on the pathway or not. And we're going to give you a writing exercise to help improve your simple changes and a writing exercise to help you develop your flying changes. And we're going to talk about all of this, and we're going to get feedback on those of you who ride the exercises and then send video footage or post it into the Facebook group for the challenge. We're going to get feedback on those, and we're going to tie it all together and show you how you can understand how this process works in a way that makes it really fun and simple and understandable, figure out basically logical. A lot of people think the flying changes are kind of a mystery, or this hard, complicated thing. They get really kind of overwhelmed or frustrated for sure, and intimidated by them. And we want to break that down, simplify it so you understand it's just a series of steps. That's all it is. And you just master these steps. You polish these steps. So you polish each one of these along the way, and you get a flying change or simple change, depending on what you want.
Sandra says there are many different patterns to introduce flying changes to the horse. What in your experience works best? That's different for each horse.
Yeah.
In our flying changes course, we have like 12 different roads, we call them. And there are horses that understand the flying change better when you ride straight lines. Some understand it better when you ride curved lines. Some have a big canter stride and they need more space, so they need longer lines, bigger patterns. Other horses fall apart. If the line is too long, they need a little bit more compact space to help them stay balanced. Some horses learn it well going from counter canter to true lead canter, staying on the same lead, on the same rein. Some learn it maybe from true lead to counter canter, staying on the same rein. You have to often experiment a little bit and try a variety of patterns and see which one works best. I mean, sometimes you try one and it works, great, you stick with it. If it works, if it doesn't work for some reason, you can try it a couple of times and you feel like, nah, I don't think he's getting it. I don't think he understands what I'm getting at. Then forget that, try something else, you know.
The benefit of having many different possible routes that you can take is that you can choose what's going to work best for your horse and what works best for you too. I was thinking of an analogy, you know, if I wanted to drive to France, you know, there are many different ways I could get there from here. You know, we're in Portugal, France is, you know, it's within reach, but there are many different routes I could take. I could go through, you know, the south route along Spain, you know, and along the ocean. I could go along the west coast, north up through Spain that way. And, you know, I could go through Madrid, you know, there's many different routes I could take. Each one is going to yield different things, and I may choose one route over another depending on whether I want to drive through mountain passes or whatever it is. Same thing with your horse. Your horse is going to have certain aptitude or certain way that he understands things, or she understands things better. And so it's nice to be able to have many different possible routes. And by practicing, now I'm not going to practice each of these routes to drive to France, but by practicing each one of these, even if you're not using them to train the flying change, but you're practicing them in the walk and trot and so on, you're still polishing all of the components along the way that are going to result in a good flying change. So basically the horse has to be straight, the horse has to be supple, the horse has to be balanced and on the aids in front of the leg on the seat.
Uphill and round and elastic is important.
Yeah, good quality canter.
I always want to set it up so the horse discovers the flying change. That it's like his idea.
That's how we make it fun.
Yeah, so that he thinks like, oh man, this is hard, this lead.
I have a good idea. Why don't they change to the other?
Because then when it's their idea, they're happy to do it. They stay calm. They don't get nervous or stressed. And then they're happy to do it again, right? And you just have to find what kind of pattern gives the horse the idea that, oh man, I would love to be cantering on the other lead now. And many horses have one particular exercise that totally makes sense to them. And it's like they get it and they do it and it's great. Some horses, not so much. With some horses, it's almost like you have to try every single approach. And then eventually there's this cumulative effect where after trying all the different roads, the horse eventually understands, oh, there is this option. I could change leads, you know, and then they get it too, you know. But for most horses, there are, you know, one or two or three ways that make sense to them pretty quickly, and they realize very quickly that a flying change is a good thing to do and makes life easier, makes life better for them. And then you also, you know, when you talk to trainers and watch trainers, most of them have developed like a favorite way to do it that they use with every horse, because for whatever reason, maybe that's something that makes sense to them or that is easy for them to do. And then they use it for the horses, and the horses usually go along with it. So that's the other side, right? So there are certain ways that make sense for the horse, each individual horse. but there's also a certain way that the rider gravitates towards for whatever reason, right? That they find that, oh yeah, I like this, I like the way this feels, this is easy for me, this makes sense to me. And so they use only that one. Yeah, but sometimes, you may run into a horse that doesn't get it at all with your favorite path, and then you have to be flexible and find one that makes sense to the horse.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me see. And then next one. Yeah, Leslie Wolf says, my horse loves haunches in more so than shoulder in. And it mystifies me as to why it comes up in front more with the haunches in. Yeah, some horses are like that. It's like with the haunches in, if you have the inside hind leg well underneath you, when you flex it, the horse will go more uphill. Haunches in the canter is actually the way the old masters used to develop collection in the canter. The haunches in along the wall, or on a circle. If you do lots of walk canter transitions in a haunches in, you just make sure the horse doesn't lean on the outside front, but he really supports himself with the inside hind. You will see that they canter more and more uphill, and they get slower, as they go more uphill. It's the weight shift from the outside front to the inside hind, and going back and forth between shoulder in and haunches in is often good, like in the walk and the trot. It can be really good exercise to get both hind legs under. And if you want to develop more collection in the canter, you can try the walk canter transitions in haunches in. Along the long side, but also on a circle line. Has a slightly different effect. Like on a circle, the inside hind has to carry even more weight than on a straight line. But yeah, it's very effective. Kathy says the video feedback which you give is amazing. I highly recommend everyone take advantage of the opportunity for this analysis. It's incredibly helpful, especially when Thomas stops the video and replays it so you can see what he sees. Thank you. Heidi, Chris ST says, I'm doing changes through the trot. Are we able to do the challenge? Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yep, perfect.
I mean, you can do simple changes through the trot or through the walk, right?
I mean, correctly, simple change is considered through the walk, but that doesn't mean you have to be there yet. We're giving you the tools to be able to get there. So you'll be working on simple changes through the walk at some point in the near future. So we're going to give you the tools to already start to get there and work on that.
Sandra says, I've tried a lot of different approaches. It doesn't seem to be the sharpest tool in the shed. It just seems like he doesn't understand. He can do them easily when it's his idea. So good news is that sometimes he finds it easy when it's his idea.
Yeah.
So then you have to figure out what's the context, in what kind of situations does he do them easily? Because there's probably a pattern to it,
There's
right?
a key here.
Yeah. And then you can design an exercise. I mean, you can either replicate the moment where he just did it because he felt it was easy. And then once you figured out what's the mechanics behind it, or what's the context, what line was I riding and this and that, then you can design exercises that have the same sort of setup. Yeah. And then it'll probably work. It's, and like you're saying, essentially the trick is to make it his idea. Like when he thinks, I'd like to do a flying change here because then I would be more comfortable, then the changes are good. So you have to observe in what situations he offers the flying change. Maybe when you didn't want it, you weren't asking for it, he just does it. Okay, what did we do here? How did I sit? What line was I riding? What movement was I riding? Yeah, some horses change leads when you're cantering on a circle because the inside hind leg feels a little overburdened. And then they switch leads to unload the inside hind, and then they're in the counter canter on the circle. Some horses change leads in the half pass. Same reason, right? The inside hind leg has to carry more weight in the half pass than if you go straight. And if the hind leg feels that that's too much work, the horse might change. So in the middle of your half pass, the horse may do a flying change without you really asking for it. Some horses offer flying change in pirouettes. When you make the pirouette smaller, then the inside hind leg can handle. They switch leads. Right? So that observe, what's the pattern here? In what situation, on what line, and so on, does he do it? And then see if you can use it to your advantage.
Yeah, Aiden Campion says haunches in walk to canter on a circle has worked brilliant for my hand.
Oh, good. Excellent. They're glad. Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand.
Yeah,
that
8% on our courses. Yeah.
I can understand why that'd be helpful for her.
Yeah, you can often, when you do that, you can often really see and feel how the horses grow in front, how they lift the shoulders, that they get bigger, the forehand gets bigger, the neck gets wider, the neck gets taller, and then it's a very different horse all of a sudden, feels different, looks different. So it strengthens the inside hind, but it's also hard for the inside hind, right? So they may only be able to do a limited number of these walk canter transitions before they fatigue, and then they're done for the day. So yeah, don't underestimate how much strength and energy goes into a good canter, good uphill round canter.
Okay. Well, we're at 45 minutes. We've talked about a number of mistakes. Were there any others that we wanted to talk about specifically, or just kind of round it off with that?
More probably.
There are more.
Try to remember. I mean, you already mentioned quite a few, like actually the exaggerated aids, the throwing your body around. The throwing the body around usually happens when the rider doesn't believe it's going to happen. Like when they feel that maybe it's unlikely that the horse will change, so they muscle it, and then they throw the horse off balance. Basically,
speaking from my own personal experience, it tends to happen when the rider knows essentially that the horse isn't 100% on the seat and on the aids. When the horse is really in front of the leg, on the aids, on the seat, you don't need to be pushing yourself around because the horse is right with you. But you're trying to basically kind of force through it, hoping you can get it anyway, when really the answer is to go back and do the work, bring the horse on the aids and on the seat, so that the change is easier with a light aid. Desperation change aids is what my trainer calls it. Yeah, that's a good one.
That's funny. That's very true.
Yeah, I think we've all been there at some point.
Oh yeah, of course. You get sucked into it.
Yeah, and that's how you go, oh, that's not really how I wanted to do it. Yeah. I think another mistake that happens easily is that horses can start to build tension for whatever reason. Maybe because they're crooked, maybe because they're anticipating and they're getting a little anxious about it. They know the change is coming, so they build tension in the neck and the pole and the rib cage and the hind legs, and often then they build tension against your inside rein. It's almost like they try to preempt the change by building so much tension that they just have to change leads. And riders often don't notice that the horse is gradually getting tenser and more stiff and more nervous, or and they just keep riding, and they think it's gonna happen, it's gonna get better. The rider gets fixated on the change rather than the quality of the movement.
Yeah. And then it's better when you notice that the horse is no longer really relaxed mentally and muscle tension is growing. Better to stop the changes, go back to either change the subject, do something completely different, or go back to just cantering, straight, round, uphill, soft, calm, maybe do some canter walk, canter transitions. And then when the horse has forgotten about the changes.
Hold on, Heidi says something weird is going on with the sound. Can you all hear us okay? It could be that there was a glitch in the internet. Let me check the mic. Yeah, mic is working. Okay.
Delay. You hear Thomas twice. Okay.
Thomas twice. Okay, the others seem it may be an issue with your Zoom. This can happen sometimes, Heidi. I would say to leave and come back.
Would you have Zoom and YouTube on at the same time? Because that can also be that you have our voice from two different sources.
There would be more of a delay though.
Mhm.
It's like about 10 seconds.
So everybody else says it's fine.
Okay,
for them.
good. Okay, I just wanted to check. Thanks.
Yeah.
So Heidi, leave and come back. Really quick.
Yeah.
Okay. Marker.
So yeah, anyway,
sorry.
tension. If tension builds, don't miss the boat on taking a break and changing the subject and restoring calmness and suppleness and everything else before you go back to it. Don't think that, like a gambler, right, keeps losing money and he thinks the next hand is going to win, or the next round of roulette I'm going to win, that's going to be the big one. And then they gamble, they lose, they gamble, and the next one is going to do it. I know it. And next time I'm going.
I just want one.
Yeah.
I just want one change.
And it's just, it happens really easily, and it's so easily to get suckered into that. It's like, I'm so close. I know, I can feel it. It's going to happen, you know, and it doesn't. And it just,
it's a losing battle.
Yeah.
With yourself.
It's a spiral. Yeah. Death spiral. Yeah. So yeah, develop a radar for when the muscle tension increases and the nervousness increases, because in order to do a good flying change, the horse has to be very supple in his body and very relaxed,
grounded.
Yeah, and if there is tension creeping in, then there comes a point where they can't do it anymore, or you know, they change in a weird way. Some horses then come off the seat and the aids and just bounce around, completely uncontrollable, like back down, head up, and then they're ricocheting off of your aids, and you know, you can't get together with the horse anymore somehow. So when you notice that tension is building, stop that, you know, stop the changes, maybe go to the walk and the trot for a moment, restore suppleness, softness, calmness, let the horse forget the flying changes a little bit, and then when it's good in the walk and trot, try the canter, see how the canter feels, and only when the canter feels calm and round and springy, uphill, you know, straight and so on, then you can try the flying change again.
Margarita Westland.
She says, my horse is extremely athletic and supple, but another rider tried the flying changes, not telling me, and he started to disunite. Now it's time to start new. What can I do? The left canter is very stable. The right canter can still disunite. So counter cantering, in other words, right? I mean, cantering, cross cantering. Yeah, so the hind legs on the left, the front legs on the right, probably. Yeah, so he probably let the horse get crooked and kind of fall apart a little bit. Or she, yeah. And so the horse ended up just changing maybe in front, not behind.
But it sounds like now the horse doesn't really stay in the correct canter, the canter gets disunited. I would go back to doing exercises which really help to strengthen the horse, so that the horse stays in the correct lead when you want it. When this is good, then I would go on and move on to suppling exercises, which then will lead you down the path towards flying changes.
So if the right lead canter is disunited, I would think that the hind legs are probably in left lead and the front legs in right lead. So yeah, what might help is ride a circle to the right in the trot, enlarge a couple of strides, ride the haunches in a couple of strides, and then maybe single track and repeat that, enlarge, haunches in. And when you canter, maybe ride with the canter with a slight haunches in position on the ride. So you're framing the outside hind, and the outside hind can't push out against your leg, and the horse can't change into cross canter. Unless there's something else going on, but then it would be interesting to see a video, for example.
That, and sometimes this can be a sacroiliac issue in the horse. I would if it persists, I would definitely have an osteopath, horse chiropractor, somebody come and take a look at this, see if the horse might need a little help, or a body worker of some sort often can help. Yeah.
That's very true. If there is some discomfort in the pelvis somewhere that could make him not want to canter on one lead with a hind legs.
Yeah. Yeah, we just answered it, Margarita. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so I hope you all have signed up for the challenge.
It's free.
Yep, it's
There's nothing to
free.
lose.
I just dropped the
Except
link.
time.
Except time. There's no such thing as time. No. Anyway, it starts on Monday. We will have each day, we will be going live to do a training. We will answer questions. If you miss any of them, they are all being recorded. You can watch them for a period of time before we take them all down. All of the details are to sign up are on. Oh, Heidi. Thanks, Heidi.
Yeah.
Okay. All of the videos are recorded. All the details are on this page. Sorry, I got sidetracked. And we would love to see you in it. If you have friends, barn buddies that you ride with, people that you like to study with, or toss, dressage information back and forth with, have them join with you. That way you can share your notes and details. We will be giving away a scholarship at the end of this to one person for our simple changes workshop and flying changes course, both of these. It's a really nice package for one special winner who shows great aptitude during the challenge. Basically, somebody who is incredibly helpful, engaging, takes lots of good notes. Usually that's what we like to see. People that take notes are participating, writing the exercises to the best of their ability, posting videos, and commenting on other people's posts, encouraging them, and so on. So we pick one person. We watch all of this during the challenge. We pick one person. We give that person a scholarship into our upcoming course. So even if you're like, I'm not going to join because there's no way I can even join the course that they're going to offer at the end, still come. One, you're going to learn a lot in the challenge anyway. It's free. You've got nothing to lose except time, according to him. Yeah, that doesn't exist. I'm 23. And you have a chance to win a scholarship. So if you have any questions about the challenge, or if you sign up and you're not sure it went through, or you didn't get your information or something, just email us at ritterdressage@gmail.com. And let me check really quick on Facebook and YouTube just to make sure I haven't missed anything. And otherwise, we will say sayonara. Awesome. I think we're done. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night or day or morning, wherever you are, and have a great ride.
Yep.